thank you for the opportunity to come and talk with you about some of the events that we have going on, and to hopefully educate you a little bit about Ohio Homeland Security, some of the programs that we have to offer, but most importantly, to share information with you about how critical you as healthcare workers in that environment are much needed and much wanted in some of these programs. As you can see, I've been in the healthcare arena. So if I kind of fumble around here, I have not been drinking anything but coffee this morning, so just be patient with me. So Sean and I are going to kind of tag team this, if you don't mind. I'm going to start out the presentation talking to you and give you an overview about Homeland Security, kind of who we are, what we do. I'm going to talk to you about the Ohio Fusion Center Network and suspicious activity reporting. And no, we don't spy on people, but we'll explain that too. And about the Intelligence Liaison Officer program. That's where we'll end up with my piece. And Sean's going to finish up the whole session. So, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Side note, I've got some material here that you're welcome to. You can come up and get it, or maybe we can pass it out, or however. So, Ohio Homeland Security, actually we were started in 2003. Made a division within the Ohio Department of Public Safety on September 26th. So we're actually part of a bigger circle. We've got our sister divisions, EMA, the Emergency Management Agency, Emergency Medical Service, State Highway Patrol, that's everybody's friend, right? And we've got Criminal Justice Services. So see, we're part of that whole umbrella of public safety. Our division, in and of itself, we kind of have two separate sessions. We've got our administration, which everybody has. You know, they oversee the grants and policy procedures. And we have an operational component, which comes into play with some of the programs that we have to offer. The Statewide Terrorism Analysis and Crime Center, the State's Fusion Center. We have the State Cyber Center as well. Little caveat here, I'm going to go fast through some of this because I know we don't have a lot of time, and I want to leave some time for Sean, and there is a lot of information to cover. So if there are any questions, you can get with me afterwards. Is that okay? So the two main components that I want to talk with you about is the SAIC and the STAC. You know, we have a million acronyms just like everybody. When I was in the military, I thought I knew all the acronyms. Then I went to telecommunications and didn't think I knew any of them. So then I found out that some of the acronyms that I learned in the military doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as they do in the civilian world. So SAIC, Strategic Analysis and Information Center, that is our state's cyber center. Everybody knows that cyber is the #1 threat in the country, right? So we stood up, actually it's still relatively new, we're still working on MOUs to get that all in place, but that will be the state cyber center. Out of that office, we are going to have programs that will come and help you with what we call cyber hygiene. So more information on that is forthcoming. And then we have the STAC, the Statewide Terrorism Analysis and Crime Center. That is the state's fusion center. Now, question for you. How many in the room know what a fusion center is? Oh, good. We'll cover that a little bit here in a minute. The SAIC and that whole umbrella, besides the cyber center, we have our P20 Safer School Initiative. A couple years ago, when the governor decided that he was going to implement some safer school programs, Department of Education part of the Department of Education, some of their staff came over to Homeland Security. So our infrastructure protection unit is responsible for working with the schools for their emergency plans to make sure that they work hand in hand with law enforcement and first responders. Our unit will actually look at those plans, and if there's gaps or holes in there, they'll go out actually and work with the schools to make them compliant. So that's housed in the SAIC. We have, again, with the Infrastructure Protection Unit, we have a scrap metal program. You think, why in the world would Ohio Homeland Security somebody's having a heart attack and you need to get a hold of somebody, that really wouldn't be a good situation. So in 2011, the scrap metal program became part of Homeland Security. So we actually, we don't regulate them, but yards have to they have to actually register and pay a fee. There's a whole lot more to that too, but just high level, the yards will register with us, we give them a certificate, and they have to renew that every year. So we kind of monitor them. Then there's a thing called the do not buy list, that certain materials are on that list, and then we work with the yards so that if somebody comes in and wants to sell some of that merchandise, then we work with local law enforcement, they get in big trouble. So, more about that later if you like. We have the Regional Coordination Unit, and that's my unit. I've pretty much done everything within Homeland Security, but right now I'm overseeing our Regional Coordination Unit. And to me, that's probably the most important unit, not because I have it, but it's because it's working with folks like you. It's working with our law enforcement. It's getting out of behind the desk and coming out and seeing people face to face, meeting people, and understanding what your needs are from a Homeland Security perspective. So when Patrick Frisconi introduced us virtually, it was a great honor because there is a lot of information to share. There's a lot of things that go on that you don't know about. We get information in, and by building these relationships and this trust element, we can share this information with you all, which ultimately, and I know it's a cliche, but ultimately it helps everybody keep our states safer. So that's part of the SEIC. Now the stack is the state's primary fusion center. Inside that stack, we have other agencies who work hand in hand with us. We have our Analyst, which is part of that Terrorism Analysis Unit. So what they do is when tips come in, these folks will make products. They do the analysis on it, on the report. They reach out through their databases and other fusion centers across the country, and they'll make a report, and we post that information on what we call SIMS, which is Communication and Information Management System. It is our backbone of information sharing. So when we bring partners into the fold, we give them access to that database. So when you log in, you're going to see information that we deem was relevant and important to post up on there. We're co-located with the Columbus Division of Police Counterterrorism Unit. We as Homeland Security for the state, we are not an investigative authority. We are a information repository and dissemination pretty much. So by being co-located with the Columbus Counterterrorism Unit, something comes in, we put it in a system, and if it rises to a specific level, they can take the lead and go out and do some checking on it, and then refer it to the FBI or whomever. Do you have anything to say on that? So we also have the Threat Assessment and Prevention Unit. And really what that is, in light of all the school shootings and all the stuff that we've had come up, those folks take a look at the bullying reports, the tips that come in, and then they'll work with the schools and local law enforcement to kind of mitigate those. And then we have the OSHP, the Highway Patrol's Criminal Intelligence Unit, and we have the EMA Watch Desk. All of those folks are co-located in one big room, pretty much. So if we get a tip that comes in on human trafficking or drugs or a potential terrorist activity, we can assign that to the appropriate analyst who will take the lead and work that information. On the flip side of that, if somebody calls in, if you are the emergency manager for your hospital, per se, and you have some really weird stuff going on, you can call the Fusion Center and you can say, hey, I'm seeing this information. Have you heard of that before? And so those analysts will help get you information. For our law enforcement folks, especially our smaller communities that don't have a lot of resources, that say they've got a case going on, they may need some assistance with that case. Our analysts can provide like social media research and kind of help them, whereas they may not have the tools to do it or the time to do it. So again, you know, we are an information sharing resource hub, if you will. So the STAC, as I said earlier, is the state's primary fusion center. There's 79 across the country. However, Ohio is very blessed because we have actually 3 fusion centers. Not only do we have the state fusion center, we have the Northeast Ohio Regional Fusion Center, which is in Cleveland, and we have the Greater Cincinnati Fusion Center in Cincinnati. All 3 of those fusion centers work collectively together, and they make up what we call the Ohio Fusion Center Network. So if somebody in Ashtabula will call in something, let's say that they have suspicious activity on the water, right? And the person lives in Franklin County. Well, they can call the New York, the Cleveland Fusion Center. That Cleveland Fusion Center is going to let us know what's going on, and we'll take the lead on that individual because he is from, or she is from Franklin County. So if we, and vice versa, if we get something and it's in the northern part of the state, then we will reach out to the New York. Now, what we try to do in most every situation is if something comes in, we try to share it with all 3 of these fusion centers so they're all in that same information circle. Because the thing is what we have learned more times than not, if there's something going on in Summit County, it's just a matter of time before it gets down to Adams County. Anybody know what Adams County is? Yeah, way down south. So it's just a matter of time. So by doing that, by sharing that information, situational awareness, so if something would come down the pipe, then like, oh yeah, we have some information on that. Make sense? Yes. Okay. So this is just a map that shows the fusion centers across the country. Again, Ohio has 3 of them, and we work very closely together. This is a map of where the fusion centers in Ohio are located. You can see where Columbus has the Cyber Center and the State Fusion Center. Bottom line, this whole program is built on recognition and reporting. So we try to teach people just the basics because you know your area better than I do. What I might think is suspicious or weird, you might, oh no, that's not so big deal. You know, a quick story. I'll try and make it fast, Sean. We had an individual that used to work with me actually, who came from a smaller police department. And every Monday morning, this elderly lady would come in and she would want to talk to the chief. So she talked to the chief and she would have a whole list of license plates numbers. And she said, I'm being followed. She was the type of lady that actually did have foil on her antennas on TV and in corners of her home. So mentally unstable, possibility. I'm not a healthcare worker, so I can't make that diagnosis, but it appeared that she was a little bit off. But every Monday, she would come in with this list of license plates and saying that she's being followed. So this went on for like a year and a half, every Monday morning. So one day, the chief's friend, who happened to be an FBI agent, came in. He thought he was going to mess with him a little bit. So he said, hey, I've got this lady that comes in and she gives me these lists of license plate numbers, and I don't know. You want to take a look at it? The chief, knowing the history, the FBI dude had no idea. Thought he was really legit. So he took it. He went back. About 2 weeks later, he called the chief and he says, hey, you know what? That's some good stuff. He says, and the chief's like, what do you mean? He said, this lady was actually part of the witness protection program, and she's actually supposed to be in Chicago. She's been missing. So yeah, there were people looking for her. So, recognition and reporting, things may not be what they seem. So by reporting and recognizing things, even though it might seem a little squirrely, report it anyways, because you just don't know. You know, bad guys are still here. They're all over. You know, in our line of work, and Sean can tell you, we don't get, it's not, nobody sees the things that is done. You know, usually if, you know, somebody gets accolades for, oh, good job, you did this, you know, it's the things that you can see. In our line of work, it's the things that you don't see as our successes, right? So, reporting and recognition. I'm going to keep saying that because that's what I want you to think about, reporting and recognition in your job. As I was saying, you know, these guys up here, they're not going away. Bad guys are here, unfortunately, to stay. When you report that information into that fusion center, that gives our analysts ammunition, if you will, to kind of put pieces of the puzzle together, because we can connect those dots. We can reach out to the local folks who can follow up for investigation. If you have a situation, report that in. Again, and I know this might be a little bit redundant, you know your area better than I do. I don't know what is suspicious in the healthcare arena, other than maybe, you know, somebody stealing uniforms or ID badges or things like that. So again, think about some of those things. Think about, you know, in your day-to-day jobs, you know, what would be something that's a little bit kind of weird. Another little story, we had a friend who used to work for COS, Central Head Trauma System, I think is what the acronym stands for. Anyway, he had a report of a guy coming into one of the hospitals in Columbus, and they were taking pictures of the rooms. Well, why would you do that, right? So, I mean, there wasn't anything to it. The guy, you know, he went up to him and said, you know, why are you taking pictures of these patient rooms? You know, he was just doing it. They reported it in. Now, was that a crime? No. But was it kind of weird? Yeah. So, again, those little things help connect the dots. Hang on, hit my fingers too fast. There. So, with those situations that we hear, and it's reported in, remember I showed you that slide of all the fusion centers across the state, across the country? All of us are connected. So, when something is reported in, if it's Ohio-based, we can reach out to California, Washington, or wherever to see if they are experiencing anything of such. Because each little piece, each little report can actually add pieces to the puzzle. And all of us are connected. That's the name of the game, is connecting those dots. So Ohio, this is kind of an older slide, but this is just Ohio. These are known terrorists. The most common, or the most recent, is this right here. I don't think this little. Anyway, the two bottom pictures right here. Christopher Cannell. Anybody heard of him? He was the young man who was down in Cincinnati. He was just a normal teenager, high school kid, kind of quiet. Went to work at Kohl's as a stockman, and then became radicalized. So it doesn't have to be, you know, a Middle Eastern person. Doesn't have to be, you know, anybody specific. And I think that's the point. It can be anybody. You know, social media today, you know, bad guys use that, and they're very good at it. And Sean can tell you, some of these magazines that come out, you're inspired, you're speaking something to the Ramaya. The graphics in that material is better than Sports Illustrated. I mean, it's very good English. And in those magazines, you can learn how to make bombs. You can learn a whole bunch of things. So, point being is bad guys use a lot of our Western ways, our American ways to do recruitment, which is what happened to this young fella. So some of those faces? Those are the ones who came to the forefront, been arrested, been caught. What about the ones that haven't? Because of folks like you who have reported information. Our first responders, our firefighters, our average, your citizen on the street. Think about that. Like I said, that picture, they've been convicted, this and that, but what about the ones who haven't? So that's why I mean when I say that what we do, the things that's been diverted and things that's been stopped from happening, that's our successes, and we can't do that without you all. So what is suspicious behavior? It can mean many things to many people. We want to look at the activity, not the person. I don't care if you're red, white, green, blue, yellow, black, or whatever. It's not that person, it's what they're doing. It's those behaviors that they're displaying. That's what we need to focus on. What are they doing? Where are they doing it? And when were they when they were doing this activity? You got somebody breaking into a pharmacy or whatever, or somebody trying to access, a locked entrance that you don't know who they are. They may have on the white coat, might have ask them. So just be aware. What do you report? You all know your areas better than I. So what do you report? People trying to get into a restricted area? That's always good. Misrepresentation? Thefts? We have received several calls and information on stolen law enforcement badges. Remember when the UPS uniforms was a big thing, those were being stolen? So any kind of a loss of or stolen material like that, that's always good to report. Cyber attacks. Again, cyber is the #1 threat. And it's horrible because technology changes every second, it seems. I know in Northwest Ohio, the Board of Elections was hacked. It took the FBI several days to come in, and they went into the deep web, the deep dark web. They confiscated everything, and it took almost 2 years to get that after-action report back. So, any kind of a cyber attack, that's something that you can report. And obviously, if somebody communicates a threat to your facility, that too is something that you want to report. So on our website, you can share this with, if you have staff, with your coworkers. On the Homeland Security website, it's homelandsecurity.ohio.gov. We have a video there on the 8 signs of terrorism, and it goes into a little more detail, and it's actually a pretty good video, even if they didn't make it. We partnered with Capital University, and those students were into this big time. We gave them the kind of the meat of it, and they went out and they did just a phenomenal job. So that video is there for your use. You can show it. If you want it on a CD or DVD, just let me know and I can get that for you. But it is a very good video, and it does go into each of the 8 signs of terrorism. If you don't, I would really encourage you to check with your organization to see if you have any kind of existing procedures to report suspicious activity. One thing I'm wanting to say, and I want you to really understand this, we are in no way trying to get you to report to the fusion centers and circumvent local law enforcement, because that is not the key. We want you to work with your local law enforcement, but we want you to be aware and understand that there are other reporting avenues out there as well. So if you do have something going on, report it. Report it through your normal chain, report to your local law enforcement, but copy us too, or give us a call, kind of let us know, because we can reach back to your local law enforcement and work with them as well. Make sense? So now, my little last piece of this, what I want to share with you, is the ILO program. It's the Intelligence Liaison Officer program. This program is a national, it's a federal program, and it is administered nationally. It's not one of those programs that the state during the each agency that will work hand in hand with us and kind of be our go-to, if you will. That ILO is a vital link to share information. So if you get information from us, we want you to share that with the folks in your agency or your department. We want you to educate other folks, your family, on recognition and reporting suspicious activity. Because Homeland Security is really just, it's everybody's job. It's not just the folks who are employed by Homeland Security. So back in 2015, I told you that our program started in 2007. Well, in 2015, we decided we need to do something different. Because before we just had law enforcement. And I think in 2011 we brought in the fire service. So we got to do it. I did an assessment of the program because I inherited it. And I'm thinking, okay, this really doesn't make sense. Cops are good. They know a lot. Firefighters are good. They know a lot too. But, before 9/11, the problem was a lack of sharing information. So, don't mean to offend anybody, but cops don't share very well sometimes, right? And let's face it, if you have something going on, firefighters are a little more friendly to come up to than some cops, right? So we thought, okay, we got these dilemmas. So we decided to take a look at the program and expand it. So we went away from that Terrorism Liaison Officer because let's face it, terrorism has started to become a buzzword, and it lost some of the impact, I think. That's But we rebranded the program to Intelligence Liaison Officer, and we went to an all crimes related to critical infrastructure. So what is hospitals? What are healthcare facilities? So that's one of the reasons why we did that. So what is the purpose of an ILO? I think by now you all can understand what the purpose of an ILO is, right? What do you think? Recognition and reporting, right? So that is the whole purpose of it. We want you to understand what to report. And it might seem silly to you, but it might be that piece of the puzzle that we don't know. Because again, we don't know your environment like you do. So by reporting those things, it could be a piece of that puzzle to the bigger picture. We want you to understand where these fusion centers are, which one's closest to you, which makes sense, right? So we want to help educate you on staying current with some of the trends and the tactics and things like that. I'm not going to read all this stuff, but just 2 points. The goal of the ILO program is to increase local, statewide, and regional intelligence. Because if we know something going on at the staff, and we know it affects the healthcare industry, and we don't share it with you, well, shame on us, right? So that's why we're here, is to introduce you to this information, and with the hopes that you may decide to be an ILO, or that you may decide to utilize, the fusion centers and report information. We want to encourage you to report information timely. We had an incident a few years ago, actually now. A girl called and she was a detective, and she said, I should have reported this a long time ago, but we have this empty church in our area, and she said that we have 2 people that frequent it quite often. We know they come from West Virginia, they come through, they stay a couple days, and then they leave. And we know that they're crackheads, we know that they have an issue, but they don't cause any problems, they just stay in this abandoned church overnight and then they leave. Well, the last time that they were there, the next day the church burnt down. So we thought, well, they had the fire marshal's office come out, they did an investigation, and it had to do, the fire had to do with some kind of electrical thing in the back of the church. So we know it wasn't nefarious, we know it wasn't arson or anything like that. Which, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so, what now? She said about a week and a half later, we had a guy coming in, and he pulled into the parking lot, and she said we had a canine unit sitting there, and he was just kind of watching. Well, this guy got off the motorcycle, started walking through the debris and kicking it, and picking up pieces and smelling it. And, you know, hey, what's he up to, right? So she said the officer, the canine officer, got out of his vehicle and went over and he says, "Can I help you?" And the gentleman said, "No, that's fine, thank you. I'm an investigator at the State Fire Marshal's office." Well, ding ding, they already knew that wasn't true. So the officer spoke with him a little bit, and before he left, he went over to the dog and he blessed the dog before he left. Now, was there any crime committed? No. But was it weird? Was it kind of squirrely? Yeah. So she reported that it was late, but you know, she reported it. So timely reporting is critical in what we do and what you see. So just keep that in the back of your head. So who can be an ILO? Again, when I was talking to you about the expansion of the program, we decided it would be a really good idea to bring in the EMS service along with the fire service. I mean, it just makes sense, right? They're out there, they make calls. EMA, who else knows your counties and your regions other than your sheriff department more than your emergency management agency? They're there in natural disasters, they're there before an incident, they're there during and after, right? So we brought those folks in the loop. Corrections, public health. You know, I'm sure in your area, in the Cleveland area, we have free clinics, right? There's some, I know in Columbus, there's some docs that have these free clinics. Well, what if Janie Smith comes in on a Tuesday and gets treated for something, and then Thursday Janie Smith comes in and gets treated again, but it wasn't the same Janie Smith and it had the same credentials? You know, was that human trafficking? Or if you get somebody coming into an emergency room, it didn't have to necessarily be a female, but, you know, beat up, was that domestic violence, or was it an honor beating? You see what I'm saying? So just pay attention to the detail. So public health is a no-brainer to bring y'all into the picture. Of course, you know, our military, you know, my son-in-law is a command sergeant major right now. He had a recruiting battalion out in California. He could not even allow his troops to come to work in uniform. And Sean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just, the threats are just that bad, especially at the time with the recruiting facilities. Our private sector, so who owns most of our critical infrastructure in the state? Our private sector, right? So anyone who has a Homeland Security mission or nexus, we want to invite you to participate in this program. Good communication skills, those are kind of a requirement. These are all no-brainers, again. Keeping you engaged. So to be an ILO, there's a nomination application process, and then we give you a free training. You get a certificate. We add you to the master roster so that in the event something happens in Summit County at a specific hospital or whatever, we can reach out to you and say, hey, did you know about this? Or you can reach out to us and say, hey, we got this going on. Are you seeing anything else like this in the other healthcare facilities across the state? So that, you know, again, information sharing. We'll give you free training. We will give you access to our databases. This is all free of charge. The time commitment for you is really what you want it to be. You know, once you attend the workshop, and you know, Region 5 will have meetings. They're usually quarterly, and they usually last about 2 hours. And what we do is we provide a briefing on a topic, whether it's a sovereign citizen or whatever. And then we have an annual conference once a year where all of the 1,600 ILOs across the state of Ohio gets together. And we do a 6 to 8 hour seminar for you. So really what we're requesting is a phone call. You know, if you know me and I know you, you're more apt to tell me something because it's that element of trust, right? The thing that I like to look at all of this is about, it's like this. You know your agencies better than I do. And I am sure each of your facilities have things in place as policies, procedures in place, that you're very secure. I'm sure you lock your doors. I'm sure you do all of those things. But the thing is kind of, I look at it like this, it's like redwood trees. Redwood trees goes, what, 300 to 500 feet in the air, right? But did you know that their root system is really shallow? So the reason that they can withstand storms and fires and everything else is because their root systems are intertwined together, they're fused together. That's how I look at this ILO program. Whether you're military, whether you're law enforcement, whether you're healthcare, whether you're EMA or whatever, none of us are as good individually as we can be collectively. So by fusing all of our root systems together, we are more apt to be able to stop a bad guy or to, mitigate a potential issue. Make sense? Because all of us actually contribute to this whole big piece, this whole puzzle. So that's my contact information. I'm going to give this over to Sean to wrap it up. Thanks.
All right, so Mary obviously has been, she's passionate about this, right? She's been in this role for the last, 15, 20 years maybe or so. I'm relatively new to this particular program. I'm a military guy by trade, 20 plus years, so swimming in a sea of acronyms for the past couple of decades. I need to learn a handful of new acronyms. But so to whittle down what Mary said, we talked about the stack. One particular piece of the stack that I'm responsible for is more that intelligence component. And whittle it down even further, the human intelligence component. So those eyes and ears that are out there in the state, all of you folks here in the healthcare community, the local business owners, the law enforcement liaisons within those communities, I'm building relationships with these guys so that I can be that direct point of contact with them. If they see something, hear something, then they can say that's something to me. But as Mary had mentioned, definitely use those procedures that are already in place to report that stuff. But some of the things that I want to touch point on here, and I know we're kind of running out of time. I don't have a formal presentation or anything, but definitely if we can expand the ILO program to the non-law enforcement community, right? So we've got all those great cops and those EMS folks, firefighters and whatnot that are a part of the ILO community, the intelligence liaison community. I would love to have more non-law enforcement folks that are sometimes more passionate about really reporting that information, right? So the cops on the street, and I'm not a cop, I absolutely have the utmost respect for what those guys are doing on the street, but you can become a bit jaded, you kind of see bad stuff all the time, and it's just, it's par for the course for that neighborhood or for that particular threat. Whereas the non-law enforcement ILOs that we seem to work with seem to want to be a little bit more involved, a little bit more passionate about communicating information through your local law enforcement authorities, but then definitely through the ILO channels and through the stack, and allow our stack analysts to put that piece of the puzzle together. So what might be just a small little piece of information that's just, it's kind of a gut instinct, right? You see something that may not necessarily look like it's, it just looks suspicious, right? So go through that suspicious activity reporting procedure and push that to the stack, through those channels, through the ILO program, and let the stack analysts, let those high-speed analysts, those folks in the intelligence community figure out, what it is, what is that? Are we starting to see a trend of something? Are we starting to see patterns every year, every full moon on this quarter, this particular activity happens? Well, what does that mean? Well, that's just that's going to prepare us for the next potential event. And so what we're trying to do on the intelligence side is not so much be reactive, right? And you guys hear it all the time, proactive versus reactive. But we really do want to be proactive. We want to be in a state of prevention versus a state of reacting to a crisis. Military guy, I'm all about training, right? Train, rehearsals and rehearsals. That's how you become an expert in your craft. We're not training to be good at our jobs, right? We're training to be experts at our craft. So I met Steve Carroll this morning, Sergeant Major Carroll, and we started to talk about training. And those are some of the things that my group of folks within the stack, that intelligence group, we want to put those training exercises together. Tabletop exercise where we're just kind of talking about a scenario, we're working through the procedures, we see some suspicious activity, we're working through our channels of reporting that, and then potentially defeating or preventing some sort of a terrorist attack, criminal activity. Lots of, unfortunately, lots of active shooter incidents throughout the country, and you see the trend in that, and we just definitely don't want to see that happen, particularly within the healthcare community, because what is this facility? Now, there's going to be lots of answers, but from a criminal mindset, from a terrorist mindset, what is this particular facility to them? Not only is it a target, what kind of a target is it? It is a soft target, right? So how do they get into these soft targets? They try to blend, right? So now we're seeing potential trends of uniforms missing, badges missing. Maybe we've got some new employees that are responsible for the badge creation machine or whatever. Now, I don't advise anyone to live in a constant state of fear, right? We don't want to be in a constant state of, uber vigilance and we're reporting everything we see. We don't want to muddy the intelligence waters up because they can be pretty muddy already. There's plenty of information out there. However, we also don't want to live in a constant state of complacency either, right? Complacency kills. And that's something that being a military guy is, as soon as you get complacent in your environment, you're prone to bad things happening to you. So it's that balance. I don't want to live in a state of fear. I've got 3 little boys that I'm raising, and we've got it in the news every day about school shootings and stuff. I don't want my boys to grow up in a state of fear. However, we also want to be observant, and we want to be prepared, and we want to be ready for those worst case scenarios. And that's what this whole program is. It's just being prepared, preventing something disastrous from happening, but creating that root system, that we talked about with the redwood. And there's kind of an inside joke. I guess there's a countdown to when she uses the redwood root system analogy, but it is true, right? We're fostering relationships and we're sharing information. It's not just simply Northeast Ohio Healthcare Coalition is pushing all kinds of information down to the stack. The stack is a resource for you as well, right? So maybe you've got some VIPs coming into your community. Maybe you've got some sort of big conference going on, and maybe there's just the slightest fear of concern or something. You can reach out into the stack and you can ask those analysts, hey, is there anything that we may need to be aware of? We're having a big conference. We've got some VIPs, some specialty surgeons coming in, international, whatever. They can help you prepare for that. It's preparation and it's information sharing and it's training and developing training so that we can be better experts at our craft and be more prepared. So prevention, proactive versus reactive, the tabletop exercises or maybe some type of an annual training exercise. We can help you guys develop that. We would love to be in the tabletop discussion for any type of future training exercise. We'd love to be a part of that. And we can really flex all of the muscles within the Northeast Fusion Center and the stack and all of your local law enforcement and whatever procedures you have here at this particular facility. And there's only one particular example that I can think of, and at least in the time constraint that we have, related to the healthcare industry, and then further related to potential acts of terrorism. So I was working with the FBI guys for a while, a few years ago. We were working a case, kind of a national/international case, but it was really born out of the healthcare industry, and it was born out of like the X-ray engineering, technicians that work on these X-ray machines, and engineers that continue to calibrate these X-ray machines that you find in all kinds of healthcare establishments, right? Hospitals and clinics and things. So they're trying to get this particular element was becoming more and more familiar with the engineering and the calibration and all this of these X-ray machines, not for any type of an attack against the healthcare facility, but to defeat X-ray machines in other facilities, right? So they've got full access in a soft target to these X-ray machines, and they're utilizing this full freedom of movement, access and placement to this X-ray technology to utilize their procedures to try to defeat these X-ray machines. So what type of metallic substance can we try to run through the X-ray machine and it may not pick up? What type of a plastic that can be used in a weapon system can we run through this X-ray machine and try to defeat something at another location, right? So we were able to pick up on that through some of our contacts and what we call tripwires and stuff throughout the community, and we found out what these guys were doing. And then after months or years of investigative casework, we found out that this is exactly what they were doing. They were engineers and they were calibrators and they worked on these X-ray machines, and they were basically on a team of folks that were trying to understand how to defeat X-ray technology for airports overseas or whatever. So through that information network, right, that human information network, and then lots of investigative techniques and lots of casework and proactive individuals, they were able to prevent potentially an attack somewhere, right? I mean, you just never know what could have happened, but it's the news that you don't hear are the successes. So to wrap it all up, I know we're in a bit of a time crunch. It is that relationship that we want to build, and we're just trying to share. It's a two-way street. The stack has lots and lots of cool toys and options, particularly for our law enforcement community. They've got advanced surveillance techniques they can use. They've got photo and video exploitation services and stuff. And I think that's primarily for law enforcement. However, there's just all types of tools that can be taken advantage of in Central Ohio at the stack. So hopefully you'll see our names soon. I definitely charge you with trying to become part of this ILO program. Go through that healthcare specific suspicious activity reporting certification process. Things you probably already know, right? You already know all this stuff. You just don't know that you know it yet. And that training will allow you to reinforce the knowledge that you already have, and then provide you with that communications platform to share, that two-way street of sharing. So with that, I know Mary covered a whole bunch of stuff, and that slideshow was great. I mean, hopefully that's shared amongst the community through the website, and that's a great resource. But are there any questions before we start to wrap this up? Yes, ma'am.